Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'll tell you what, folks, the moment I read about what's coming for Drew and Willow, I had to sit back for a second. Just when it looked like this story was finally slowing down, General Hospital found another way to pull the rug out from under everyone. I've watched this show long enough to know that when a character starts getting better, trouble is usually waiting around the corner. Sure enough, that's exactly what happened here, and I have a feeling this isn't just another accident. This feels like the kind of moment that changes lives all across Port Charles. What really caught my attention wasn't just Drew slowly getting the feeling back in his body. It was Willow's reaction. The second she realized she couldn't keep Drew under the effects of those paralysis drugs anymore, panic took over. And honestly, I can't say I was surprised. A person can spend only so long trying to bury the truth before every little crack starts letting the light in. Willow has been living with fear hanging over her head for weeks, knowing that if Drew recovered enough to tell his side of the story, everything she has fought to protect could disappear in an instant. I keep thinking back to the moment Willow begged Jen Sidwell to stop supplying the drugs, and he simply refused. Looking back now, that conversation feels much bigger than it did at the time. Then Nina accidentally injected Jack Brennan with Drew's medication, creating another loose end that Willow desperately hoped nobody would connect. You know, that's the thing about secrets. Around Port Charles, they never stay buried forever. One mistake leads to another, and before long, the whole truth starts knocking on the front door, whether you're ready or not. Now, Sidwell is on the run after being framed in the shooting of Lucas, but I don't believe for one second that he's completely out of this story. Men like that always seem to cast a shadow even when they aren't standing in the room. Willow knows it too. She isn't just worried because Drew is recovering. She's terrified because she no longer has any way to control what happens next. Once Drew is able to speak freely and move again, every lie, every cover-up, and every desperate decision could come rushing back all at once. Then comes the part that really made me stop and think. Drew finally begins regaining his mobility, only for a horrifying accident to send him crashing to the floor in a pool of blood. Good Lord, that's the kind of scene that sticks with you. It isn't simply about someone getting hurt. It's about timing. After everything Willow has already been accused of, who is honestly going to believe this was just a terrible accident? Sometimes bad luck can look exactly like guilt, and in this town, appearances often carry more weight than the truth. I also can't ignore what Kai and Trina are likely to think. Those two know far more than most people realize. They were there the night shots were fired, and although that truth couldn't be used in court, it has never left their minds. So if they hear Drew has suffered another terrifying incident inside Willow's home, it's easy to imagine them connecting the dots the wrong way. From where they're standing, this could look like another attempt to silence Drew before he fully recovers. Whether that's true or not may not matter once suspicion starts spreading. And that's where I think this story becomes much bigger than Drew's injury. One bloody fall could create legal problems that nobody saw coming. Alexis has spent so much time protecting Willow, trying to hold together a situation that has been falling apart piece by piece. But every person has a breaking point. If new evidence starts surfacing because of Drew's accident, I wouldn't be shocked if Alexis decides she simply can't keep carrying this burden anymore. Sometimes loyalty only lasts until the truth becomes impossible to ignore, and I have a feeling that moment is getting awfully close. The more I sat and thought about this storyline, the more I kept coming back to one conclusion. Willow is probably about to become the easiest person in Port Charles to blame. I hate to say it, but that's how these things usually work. Once someone has made a series of bad decisions, people stop looking at the facts and start looking at the person's past instead. Every new disaster suddenly becomes another reason to say, see, I knew it. And I have a feeling that's exactly what's waiting for Willow after Drew's terrifying accident. Just picture the scene for a moment. Drew is discovered lying on the floor, covered in blood. The hardwood floor is stained, pieces of broken glass are scattered everywhere, and the entire room looks like something far worse than a simple fall. Now imagine the police arriving, friends rushing in, and neighbors hearing bits and pieces before anyone knows the full story. Folks, that's the kind of situation where rumors travel faster than the truth ever could. Before the facts have a chance to breathe, Willow's name is already being dragged through the mud again. What makes this even more believable to me is Drew himself. Ever since he started showing signs that his body was waking up again, I couldn't shake the feeling that he was going to push himself too hard. That's just who he is. Drew has always been determined. He's never been comfortable sitting still while other people take care of him. Men like him often convince themselves they're stronger than they really are, especially after spending weeks feeling trapped inside their own bodies. Believe me, I've seen people recover from serious injuries, and one of the biggest dangers isn't weakness, it's confidence arriving before the body's actually ready. I can almost see Drew waking up that morning thinking he could handle just one more step without help. Maybe he wanted to prove to himself that he was finally getting his life back. Maybe he didn't want Willow hovering over him anymore. Maybe he simply got tired of feeling helpless. Whatever the reason, all it takes is one misplaced step, one foot slipping at the wrong moment, or one sudden loss of balance. Recovery is rarely a straight line, and sometimes the worst setbacks happen just when people think they're finally in the clear. The reports about the damaged hardwood floor really caught my attention because they paint such a vivid picture. I don't think people realize how violent an ordinary accident can look. If there happened to be a large glass decanter sitting nearby, or maybe one of those heavy decorative bowls filled with juice or water, Drew could have fallen directly into it. The glass would explode into dozens of sharp pieces in an instant. If his face struck the broken glass first, deep cuts could appear almost immediately, sending blood across the floor before anyone even had time to react. Suddenly, the room wouldn't look like the scene of an accident anymore. It would look like someone had been attacked. That's exactly where I think the real misunderstanding begins. Evidence doesn't always explain itself. Broken glass doesn't tell you why it broke. Blood doesn't tell you how it got there. People see the aftermath, and their minds immediately fill in the blanks with whatever story seems to fit. Unfortunately for Willow, she's carrying enough baggage that many people will assume the worst before considering any other possibility. Then I started thinking about Kai. He was already uneasy about Drew spending time alone because he knew Drew wasn't fully recovered. That concern suddenly becomes much more important after an accident like this. But instead of asking whether Drew may have simply pushed himself too far, I can easily imagine Kai wondering if something much darker happened inside that house. After everything Kai and Trina witnessed in the past, it's understandable why their first instinct might be suspicion instead of sympathy. That's another thing I find fascinating about this story. Kai and Trina know pieces of the truth that most people don't. They remember the gunshots. They know Drew has already survived one horrifying ordeal. Those memories don't simply disappear. So when they hear Drew has been found bleeding again, it's only natural for those old fears to come rushing back. Sometimes previous trauma changes the way people interpret every new event, even when the facts point somewhere completely different. Poor Willow may not even have a chance to explain herself before public opinion turns against her again. We've seen this happen so many times in Port Charles. One rumor becomes two, two become 10. Before long, people start repeating assumptions as though they're proven facts. I've watched this town jump to conclusions more times than I can count, and somehow nobody ever seems to learn from the last mistake. What really breaks my heart is that this entire tragedy could have been caused by something incredibly human. Drew may simply have wanted one small piece of his independence back. He may have believed he could walk across the room by himself. He may have even decided to sneak out of the house for a few minutes just to prove everyone wrong. That's not the behavior of someone making a reckless plan. That's the behavior of someone desperately trying to feel normal again after weeks of depending on everyone else. Sadly, determination can become just as dangerous as weakness during recovery. The body heals at its own pace, not the pace our pride demands. Drew may have felt stronger, but feeling stronger and actually being fully healed are two very different things. One careless moment could have erased weeks of progress in the blink of an eye. As I look at everything that's unfolding, I honestly think Drew's injuries won't be the biggest story for very long. The larger story will be how quickly everyone decides they already know what happened. That's the lesson General Hospital keeps reminding us of over and over again. The truth usually arrives last, long after opinions have already been formed. And if this really was nothing more than a heartbreaking accident, then I hope the people of Port Charles stop long enough to ask themselves one difficult question. How many innocent people have suffered simply because everyone was so eager to believe the worst? Sometimes a pool of blood, shattered glass, and a ruined hardwood floor aren't signs of another crime. Sometimes they're just the painful reminder that recovery is fragile, life can change in a single second, and one unfortunate accident can destroy far more than a beautiful home.